Hey, Composing Gloves here, and today I'm going to show you how to chop up a beat, chop up a drum thing or anything, chop up any sample, make a beat out of it, and also how to simply make things in time with your song, specifically drum loops. So let's jump over to Renoise, and there it is, poof, Renoise. And first thing we need to do is load up a drum sound. So if you don't have one, you secretly do if you have Renoise. Go to your sample page, and then go to the breaks folder, and you'll have all these breaks. Something I haven't showed you yet, but it's useful to note. Whoop, I'll disappear here for a second. Down here, we have this little speaker icon, and we have a volume slider. This controls the ability to preview samples. So if this icon is orange, when you click on a sample, you will preview it. The level that you preview it at is determined by this volume slider. You can stop it by hitting this little stop icon. And that's it. So I'm going to really quick come back and let's load it up. So I'm going to load up this one with the 92 next to it. So you see, there we have it. Very cool. Now I want to play it in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit escape to enter edit mode. And then I'm going to put down a note in Renoise. If you hit the Q key, it will put down a C4. If you've just opened up Renoise, you haven't messed with the multiplication or division key. And so you put down a C4. C4 in Renoise is how you get it to play back at the original pitch. So if we play it, and you notice that it's also red in the spectrogram. It's one of the really cool things about Renoise is it will show you, it will highlight the thing you have selected on your track. So it will actually show you where things line up in the spectrogram, which is outrageously nifty. So I'm going to turn on my metronome here. Let's see if it's in time. You see the metronome's white, why this is red. So cool. So we say, oh no, it's not in time. We got to fix this. So to fix it, I'm going to hit F3. So you go to my sampler tab. We've talked about this, so it should be good. I want to point out something as we do this. Notice underneath my samples, we have the master sample being referenced. So the master sample is just the whole sample. When we begin to chop, we're going to populate this with additional samples that are pieces of this master sample. Okay, so the only thing we need to change is you go down to sample properties, go to beat sync and turn it on. And believe it or not, you're done. So now you might be going, okay. I'm turning off my metronome now. You might be going, but what did that just do? Well, it just said, play this sample and make it so that it will play it perfectly over the course of 64 lines. So it just moved it so that it will start and stop perfectly at 64, the length of 64 lines. We could change it to 32 and it will speed it up twice as fast because now it'll play this whole thing over the course of 32 lines. And we could also do 128, and that's, of course, that will slow it down by half. But both of them will sound in time because they're multiples of 2. So that could be really useful if you have a long or short sample and you want to augment the speed that it's going at. It'll sound more natural occasionally. So that's a really, really easy way of doing things. So the next way is sampling. So let's talk about that. So let's say I want to create a whole new groove, but when I hit new notes here, I'm able to change the pitch. Now, that's a good point. I'm not able to change the pitch in beat sync mode. You see if I play? It still starts. It doesn't care what note I put down. In order for me to have control over the pitch, I must turn off beat sync. Now, you can hear that I now have control over the pitch of the sample, but I can no longer control the tempo of the sample. I just said sample. Sample. So okay, let's use chopping now. So you could hit slice, and you could come in here and click and do slices. And as we add slices, you notice that a couple things happen. First off, we're given these numerical representations of 1 and 2. And over here, our menu has been populated. If I go to these new samples, we see they are the pieces in between. And this is the other half of our sample. So if I throw down some more, we could sample it like so, and they begin to appear. These samples can be viewed in the key zones. So we see, oh, here they are. Here are all the samples that we have. It says the current instrument is sliced, thus automatically mapped. So we don't touch the mapping in this case. Now, I don't want these here. And so we're going to go in and to delete a sample, I simply, whoops, let's go back to the waveform view and see, I don't see my samples on these. I have to go to my master sample, and I simply can double click to get rid of samples. Now, so you can go through and put a sample in each spot just the way you want, but it takes forever. The better way is to hit this little icon. It's the auto slice. I believe it's control J. I was going to say control G. So you hit this and bang, it will now automatically slice your sample for you. And you can change the sensitivity of this thing so that it will place down less. And it works on a principle, it works on basically a threshold. So if your sample gets past a certain point at any moment, it'll put a slice mark there. And you notice that they're named with sort of weird letters or numbers, O2, O3, and then we get to OD, or 0D, 0E, 0F. These are hexadecimal, this is hexadecimal counting. So it's counting for up one by one, but it's using hexadecimal. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So now if I play my my keyboard, if I hit my first key, which would be C3 in this case, so you see C3 is my master sample. So if I hit C3, it will play through the whole thing. But if I hit C#3, it'll play my first sample, and then D3, and then so on and so forth. Now what I can do is, maybe the way it's been configured right now is if I hit a key, first off, it's going to loop, which I might not want. And as soon as I let go, it just stops, which I may also not want. So I'm going to select all my samples by just hitting Control. I go down to the bottom and then hit Shift and then click. And then I'm going to say I want them all to be one shot. And what I also, in one shot mode, that means that if I hit the key at all, it'll play through the whole chop. And I also turned off the ability to loop. You can't have that on at the same time. So it says, see, loop playback is disabled. And they all now have one shot on because I had them all selected. And so now, and then what you do is you have the joy of being able to go in and slowly move these things around to get them to sound just right. Like, see, oh, that's not going to be right. See, we have a click at the end of that one. Now it's gone. And see, we have that click at the end, and that's because it's sort of cut into the transient. And so you just clean up your sample, and then what you do is you come in here and you just play down notes. Let's say, which one's my kick? There we go. We'll ignore the pops and stuff for now because you can go through and move all those little points around on your own time. I'm just hitting notes trying to like, for example, I have now figured out this C#3 is the kick drum, and the E, one of these is the hat. The E is a hat. And then you can go through and you can get real crazy with what you sample. You could do this with you could do this with any sound. It doesn't have to be drums, but you come in here and that's just doing that 101. So something that I wish someone had told me about earlier was this guy, because I was using this a lot. And it's like, oh, this is a thing. Wow, I wish I had known him. And there's a couple other larger commands that are kind of useful, but for the most part, that's what you're going to be doing. Is you just click this and you move it around. Occasionally, if the sample's not that large, you may consider just using the slice option. And also having things selected to do group changes, because maybe you want looping available on just this one sample, just that one. And then when I come in here, I simply mess around. So I'll turn off edit mode. And I get a feel for where samples are. And then I just start writing. And we'll talk about entering notes later. So that's the sample tab. Now, a couple other things that are in here. If you want your sample to be pulled up when you hit a key, there is a way to do this. It is, you hit this icon here. And this icon, basically now when I hit it, it pulls it up. So you can see it and you can affect the sample properties. So that's a very useful thing to know. And then, so I like to keep it on the top one though, and then watch it get triggered from here. So most of the time, but when I'm making like group changes, I have to have them selected, and sometimes I want to see what my sample looks like. There's also some other workflow things, but there's sort of like nuanced workflow things aren't really worth mentioning as a general scale. If we also look up here, there was one other thing I wanted to point out, but it doesn't occur to me right now. So I think I'm pretty much done. Oh, I remember what it was. Okay, normalization. You have all your general commands. So you can reverse things, you can normalize things, and you can do it to only specific samples. So I would caution doing like backwards samples, like reversing samples here, because it's better to call a trigger here, and then you can put in a command called B. And B, oh, I have to be in edit mode to hit escape. And now it plays it backwards, and B1 will play it forwards. So I could like do something weird like that. Let's make it backwards and then forwards. So 0 and then 1. And if your sample plays through, if it holds out, it will because this isn't the best example, but if I were to hold my sample out, it would reverse for part of it, and then it'd be like go backwards and then it would go forwards. Let me just show you an example. So let's load up a new sound. Let's go to, I'm going to go to a trip hop folder. I'm going to load up the sound fear. I'm going to get a new pattern so that I'm separate. I'm going to play it so it's pretty low. Yes. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit B. So it's going to reverse there, and then it's going to switch to forward here. And if we watch it on the sample, check it out. So you see it like just goes back. It's like, oh, just kidding. I don't want to play that. And if we could like delete this, put it further down. Whoops. And put it there. And watch it. So you get some really interesting things by tossing that in the middle of your drums and stuff. So that's why I don't recommend coming in and doing, if you hold Alt up down again, it will also switch your view here because you're changing your instruments. But as you can see, I don't recommend doing things like that. For that reason, it's way more flexible to have the option later on, and it's not terribly complicated. And when we get into more effect commands, you'll be able to specifically call up specific slices in a way that is very useful if you want to reverse a particular thing. And then to wind things up, we also see that we have a fade out, fade in command. You can't do this on a group level. You see they get faded out, so you can't do that, unfortunately. And normalization, that's one that I'll do pretty often. Those are the ones sort of worth mentioning. So that's just a brief rundown of chopping stuff with Renoise. Super useful way, because as you begin to combine it with the effect commands and stuff, as you see, things can get pretty wild pretty quickly. And we just used reversing, so I guess it's not that wild, but you do not see stuff that interacts this way, even on the reversing level, as intuitively anywhere else. At least I haven't. Besides trackers. If you have any questions, let me know. Subscribe and support me on Patreon. And have a blessed day.
It is still my conviction, as I wrote in 1947, the compelling necessities of the moment leave us no alternative to the maintenance of real and respectable strength.